I'm going to start off by reading part of a question and a note sort of thing that somebody submitted. If all of the stories created by human cultures are true and no human has ever been dead wrong, this seems to lift a previously unnoticed burden from me, the burden of maintaining a record of the supposed errors of the past, the burden of having to bear witness almost at every moment to the supposed foolishness of everything thought and done by everyone who was not up on the latest. It's not that I had to be personally aware of every issue in detail. It was a general assumption that covered everything and could be detailed out if necessary by referring to expert knowledge, someone else's if not my own. But this general assumption was heavy enough even without the details, and this heaviness seems to have come from the fact that it was the most preposterous story of all, which for the reason demanded the greatest effort to maintain as if an unknown thumb were pressed against an unknown nose the whole time. But, on the other hand, the person goes on, doesn't one's preposterous, heavy assumption that everything thought, said, and done in the past is tainted by error and fraudulence itself count as an existing idea, in which case it must have its own way of being right also? Did everybody follow that? What this amounts to is a question regarding that great boogaboo, the apparent closed system. That is, if I tell you, which I have correctly in 3D words, that no human has ever thought, said, or done anything that per se, that within itself was wrong. But, as you can witness, the world is continually fraught with you and everyone else turning around and saying what that person just did was wrong. But the last part is also included in the first part, that the person who says these other people are wrong, they're not wrong. They're as right as anybody. Now, we get to an area wherein ordinary consciousness comes to some sort of call to you-know-what. The great sack of coals. It is a dead end for consciousness. Now let me see if I can rehabilitate, even rejuvenate, a great area that I'm sure some of you at first blush, seeing these tapes or hearing me some time ago, and off on your own, you may have thought that religion as such, especially some of the more ancient beliefs in religion, is worthy of, as this writer noted, scorn, ridicule. But let me point out something to you. That in the great religious myths, whether they be called mythological today or not, during their time they were looked at as religious myths. Let's just speak about the Western world. Within these ideas of gods was the first glimmer of scientific thought. It was not foolishness, because here is what the yellow circuit was up to. It was attempting to picture a dimension beyond that of ordinary consciousness. It was, if you can follow me, it was almost a form of particle physics. On the other hand, it was almost a form of right-angle astrophysics. It was indeed a splendid early effort, an attempt to explain the apparent limitations and contradictions that are inherent in our three-dimensional consciousness here on this planet. It was not foolishness. It was not our deranged or our simply childlike brain progenitors. It was early scientific thought to try and picture something outside of the apparent closed system. It came out as gods. Because the yellow circuit has an awareness of its limitations. It cannot hold on to this awareness, as I've tried to point out to you, and as you should have some notion on your own. It cannot hold any continual awareness of this. But in fact, the consciousness of man's desire to invent gods, if you can see it, is proof within itself of our closed system environment. If the yellow circuit did not have some awareness of this apparent closed system on our level, yellow circuit consciousness would not have any desire, would not have any need to conjure up the idea of gods. I didn't think that'd bring the house down. I'll try it again. In fact, if you could see it the right way, consciousness's motivation all over this planet throughout time, don't worry about you individually, whether you seem to fit into this, but generally speaking, human consciousness's desire to invent gods of all sorts, if you could see it, is proof within itself of our apparent closed system. If it were not for that, consciousness would have no need to try and conjure up something, an idea. Forget about gods, old Jehovah's with beards sitting on thrones. Take gods as being a scientific theory, a very ancient one, that now has been construed, at least verbally, but take it as being an early form of particle physics, a theory of particle physics, or just a scientific theory. On that basis, if you could see it the right way, if the yellow circuit did not have an awareness of limitations, if it did not have an awareness of trying to figure out life, figure out what is going on, and meeting absolute limitations, meeting areas wherein it seems to have run across a mirror, that everything begins to consume itself, everything is contradictory, were it not for an awareness of that, the yellow circuit, human consciousness, would have no need, have no motivation to conjure up such scientific theories known as gods. You might, those of you who seem inclined to find fault with religion, which there is no doubt religion offers nothing to the few, but look at it as simply outmoded scientific theories. There are people still that meet, there are clubs, they have newsletters, who believe, they say, that the earth is flat. And I hear that there are other groups of people that find this funny, that disagree with that. But according to your horizontal history, at one time it was a generally assumed fact, I keep reading this, so I'll just repeat it, that at one time, even in the Western world, many people, general consensus of opinion, they say, was that the earth was in some way flat, and if you went far enough you'd fall off, and all those stories you heard back in high school. I guess some of you heard it from that club you were in before I met you, the flat earthers, but I won't push it, no need to embarrass you here in public. But at any rate, then you could look upon these flat earth societies now, if you were going to be magnanimous at least, and you could say, well, they're not absolute idiots, because at one time our forefathers believed that. All it is an idea that is outmolded. It is even moldy. It is outdated. That, I am suggesting to you, is what the ideas of gods. And I, of course, am not insinuating that the whole area, for instance, of Athens, at some time during the prime era of Greek mythology, I'm not saying that all those people understood in some way that there were limitations to our consciousness, to their consciousness, and that for life to be explained, you would have to be able to slice another dimension down and look upon this consciousness as being simply a partial reflection of a higher dimension. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that any more than I'm saying now everyone who is a faithful Catholic or Jew or Christian is onto something. Nay, nay. What I am saying is always that life is motivating man for a very good reason. Sometimes the reasons are short-lived and they make one appearance and they're gone. But please note, religion did not make one appearance and then catch this train out of town. Once religion began to appear, it began to appear everywhere, and now it affects every phase of human life. And every poll I read, still, the majority of humans on this planet claim they believe in God, some supernatural creator of some kind. What they're saying is, without knowing it, is that they believe that there are absolute limitations / contradictions that human consciousness cannot surpass here. They're also saying, without knowing it, or they're admitting without knowing it, that by all appearances this is a closed system, and yet it cannot be, because you're left with such things as this person brought up. It cannot absolutely be a closed system. It appears to be, but it cannot be. Else, how does it eat? Since ordinary consciousness cannot deal with this, I am telling you that the ideas of gods, even if by all reports now after it's translated that they were saying that the gods flew around the sky and a lot of times lived up on Mount Olympus, lived within view of downtown Athens, it's not physically important where they placed their at least temporary homestead when they were down on planet Earth. The motivation behind this whole picturization was that there was something that man could name, something that some men even claimed that they conversed with, that they saw, and yet somehow this thing was outside the closed system and could come in and go out. It is an admission, and man has never realized it. And certainly man has never realized that the idea of God was the first real scientific thought. But it were. How about all of your dreams that you had of mystical possibilities and finding the hidden teachers in Tibet and the secret book, etc.? You very likely thought of it as being religious, spiritual in some way, but I'm telling you that that was a piece of scientific conjecture. There was scientific interest on your part. Yet to jerk it back to ordinary reality, as many people point out, from certain quite reasonable views, do not religion and science seem to be absolutely at loggerheads. That if you take them to their natural ends or extremes, that they are contradictory, that they are mutually destructive. And they're not. They just are after the people that came up with the first ideas leave town. So whoever the first Greek was that came up with the idea of gods. And remember, I'm not saying that there was some person somewhere that understood anything that understands as much as you understand. But something in life, what Freud and all of you people in college kept referring to as the unconscious or the collective unconsciousness of Jung, I'm just telling you the way I keep repeating for the time being, which is the simplest and most direct explanation, is that life works through you in the same way certain of your own organs and cells have the blood, have the electrical energy surging through them, and they simply operate. They do that which they should do for the reasons to keep you going. In the same way, humanity does things, not just physically. You can't look upon humanity as simply being white blood cells in the big guy's circulatory system. It is much more than that. Much of it comes out in the area that seems to be non-material, such as ideas. So something in this, if we could narrow it down to one Greek person, something surged through to conjure up a simplistic scenario through this little person, and he begins talking to people saying, hey, there must be gods. I think I saw a God. I think one talked to me. Maybe some people listened, which is not the point. If life was operating the right way and made him say it, it's not maybe some people listened. Some people did listen. Don't lead you astray, they didn't listen and encourage him. But if this scene was indeed what life needed, then people began to show an interest in it. Then he began to add a brother-in-law to the first God, then a wife, then children, then neighboring gods that could war with this guy, could argue with the original God. But they were talking about scientific theories. Their own consciousness at that time was attempting to break out of the boundaries of an apparently closed system, which also is apparently contradictory to all reason and is apparently the ultimate conundrum, if not cheese blends. If I were to say that the most cogent message that we have dealt with for the early 80s, verbally, if there were such that I wanted to enumerate, which I'm about to, I would say it would be this, that life is alive. All of life is alive, and ordinary consciousness has never had a general conception of this. That science still deals with organic and inorganic matter. It deals with the quick and the dead. But all of life is alive. I won't comment any further to tell you that which appears to be inorganic in our existence. I have a knowledge of the fact that if you could go into a higher dimension, the next dimension, that which appears to be inorganic here would appear to be alive. But you can notice in yourself that ordinary consciousness cannot keep a continuing awareness that life, all of life, is alive, that there is no such thing as the unalive within life. There is no such thing truly as the inorganic, although there's no doubt, I'm not arguing with the perception, the essential perception at our level with ordinary people. With ordinary senses, there is that which is inorganic. But it's not true. Another question I'm going to use for you that somebody sent. They're referring back to some of the comments I made before, if you recall, about long and short-term memory, as it is ordinarily referred to, and the person writes, it almost seems to me that the only thing that lies between short-term and long-term memory is understanding. What is called forgetfulness is a lack of understanding. Am I somewhere close? C. That could be said. I never said it, but it could be said. But now let me ask you this. Would that mean that understanding, the word understanding in quotation mark, equals the need to know? Or if you want to up the stakes a little bit, the necessity to know? Did everyone catch the part of the question? The person that wrote it was asking and surmising that could the difference between long-term memory and short-term memory, the ability to look down the phone book and find the pizza delivery service down the street from you, the closest one, and to look at the number, lay the phone book down and dial it. Maybe it's busy, and maybe even 30 seconds later you can still remember it and you dial it. An hour later, forget it. You got no idea what the number was. The short-term memory was all you required at the time. Long-term memory is something else. Long-term memory is just what they have designated it to be, that there are things that you can recall over years and years and years. And the person is asking, is it possible that one description of the difference between this, the way it operates in ordinary consciousness, be understanding? The person who wrote the question, by the way, they go into other things that were not really germane to what I was going to point out. At least you think that it sounded like an insufficient or incomplete question. They had more to it. But I wanted you to confront the great musical question I presented. Then is it possible that understanding, if you follow verbally what I'm doing, if I say to them, yes, you could say that the difference between short-term and long-term, that which is long-term memory, that which sticks with the people, is that the difference is in understanding. All right, if I say yes to that, then I'm asking you, then is it possible that understanding, in other words, if long-term memory equals understanding, then is it possible that understanding equals the need to know? After all, how long do you need to know the number of the pizza takeout delivery? And don't say, well, it'd be nice to remember it forever because next month I might want one again. I can cover that. If you need to know that bad, if you just moved to a new neighborhood and you've got to have a pizza once a week, let us say, and that you insist on having it late at night, and you also insist that a pizza is no good if you got to get up and put on your clothes and go get it. And so you insist that if there is a local pizza delivery place, you're going to find it, and sure enough, you find it in the phone book. You could be the type that you need to know that, and you may look at it and go, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. You may look at it once, you may have to do it 2 or 3 times. Then you may remember it as long as you live in that neighborhood, that you may have it. From then on, it'll be in your long-term memory. But speaking in general, is how I start out, it would assume that people do not need to have, at their instant call, a pizza delivery service. So it would fall into short-term memory, as it's ordinarily called, which I'm going along with. And so I'm asking you, if understanding is the difference between long and short-term memory, that if, in a sense, understanding equals long-term memory, then I am asking, does that mean that understanding could then equal the need to know? If you can follow that, I would suggest to you that brings up many, many interesting possibilities. Why is it that people insist that they don't understand what's going on in life? Why is it that people, intelligent people, in our day and time, it's even considered to be almost a bellwether of one's intelligence, to say, I wish I understood my own motivations better than I do. In other words, they're saying, I don't really understand who I am. I'm in analysis. Been in it for years. I approve of it. I still don't understand some of the things I do, some of the feelings I have, but I want to understand. But they are admitting I do not understand. Based upon the question I was giving you, what immediate possibilities does that raise up to you? Quite simply this, that you got no need to know. That humanity in general has no need to know. They have the need to say that they don't know. They have the need to even say that they would like to understand. I didn't get too arcane again, did I? All across life, you included, you in the partnership, people say, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand how some humans can treat other humans in that particular way. I don't understand how one group can discriminate against another group. I don't understand how people can treat me the way they treat me. And in a weak moment, people say, I can't really understand why I did that unsavory thing, why I said that untoward comment. I don't understand what's going on in life. That's why I read books. That's why I look for some secret teaching. That's why I wish religion was more viable, etc. They're admitting, I do not understand. But if understanding equals the need to know, then what's amiss? Put it to you another way. If you're 25, 35, 45, 55, whatever you are right now, look at it this way. Your ordinary voice, your ordinary thoughts may say that other than your involvement here, that you never really understood what in the world was going on. It was also your fairly studied opinion that no one else, rabbis, ministers, your family, nobody else really understood what was going on. If that be true, what I said, that all of these things that appear to be very occult, beyond the realm of immediate grasp intellectually, the people do not really need to know it, including why am I like I am? Why are the people like they are? But to turn it back over where I started the sentence, look at it this way. that voice can be saying, I do not understand what's going on, but you have understood enough, in that sense, of what's going on to get you here. Now, I don't mean here with me, here in life to the age of 25, 35, 45, 55. And you can be saying in your ordinary voice, is, I don't understand what's going on. I can't really take much more of this. I can't take much more of living in a world when I pick up the newspaper and every day it's bad news. People mistreating one another in the name of religion. People say they do not understand life, they don't understand themselves, but look at it. Some way, humanity as a whole and individually, including you, some way, by God, they muddle through. You muddle through to your, if nothing exceptional happens, to your statistical age here in this country of 70 or 72 or whatever it is. And on your deathbed, you or somebody else can be saying, what a shame. I feel like I just lived a life in some kind of dream. I don't understand what went on. I don't understand why I lived like I did. I don't understand why I ended up married to the woman or man I ended up with. I don't understand why I pursued that profession that just drove me nuts, was unsatisfying all those years. I don't understand why I put up with it. I don't understand why I went in debt. That I just got the house paid for. Working on the third mortgage I got paid for last month, and here I am dying. I can't understand why I wasted my life like this. I can't understand why I worried all these years about kids shaving their hair, painting their skulls purple, and playing that ungodly music. And I used to worry about it. And I'm laying here dying, and I can't understand. Why did I worry about that? I couldn't understand why people were of other religious faiths than me. And I'm laying here dying now, and who cares? I can't understand why I did that. I just feel like I lived a life with no understanding, and it's not true. You understood just enough to live to be 72 years old and get there. Muddle right through it, if you want to look at it that way. But back to what I was asking you, it offers very interesting possibilities to some of you people's reoccurring questions. What if understanding, let us just say for a second, use understanding either with a capital U or in quotation marks, and we could say that understanding with the big U is the purpose of this kind of activity. Always has been. I can call it that as well as anything. That what you want is not just knowledge, not just factual or social education, more data, even more data. Data, jing, jing, well. What you want is understanding with a big U. That would be something beyond ordinary knowledge. Understanding would be that which would increase your perception. Take the scales from your eyes, rub the sleep from your beautiful brownies and blueies. Open up your heart, your spirit, your soul to the great cosmic truths, and so on. That is understanding. Let's say that that's the aim of all of this. Then I'm still asking you, what if understanding equals the need to know? Then you continue to ask me and write notes, write poems to yourself of why can't I go any faster? Why don't I make any more progress? Why as I sit here and listen to you once a week, and sometimes it feels as though I get little, just absolute bolts of understanding, little packets of new energy and information, things I'll write down notes I'm going to start doing, things I'll remember that you said, and it connected somewhere in me, and I walk out of here, and by the next day, most of it's gone, and in the next 5 days, it's just sort of I'm laying in a trough or in a ditch, waiting for the next week until we meet again. Comma, what can I do? What if understanding, what if the apparent goal of this is tied to the need to know? Of course, as always, if I keep repeating this rhetorical question over and over, I guess you're safe in assuming there's something behind it. What if you're getting all you need? What a bummer. I'm repeating, I heard somebody said that next to the amen corner. I assume you'll see the connection. I brought another question I'm going to take off on. Some of you may recall that some weeks back I asked you sort of a question to neuralize. Why is it that there seems to be nothing humorous about being happy? That you don't have jokes about that the setup runs down the punchline, but the setup's about happiness. I ask you, why is it, once I pointed out, that there seems to be nothing humorous about being happy? Here's one I've carried for a bit. This was in response. Sometime a little after that, somebody wrote me a note. I won't read it all, but what they got to was from some of their observation that jokes seem to serve the purpose as verbal lubrication. Even ordinary jokes, here's the part I wanted, at times to me seem to be missiles aimed at other people's incompleteness. All right. Let's take what this person made as an observation, kind of a question to me, and now let me ask you another question. Remember the part I just read, the little part, that sometimes ordinary jokes to this person seems to be missiles aimed and directed to, based on other people's and humanity's incompleteness. Now my question to you is this. Is happiness indeed man's intended state of completion? If there is some validity, which I don't know why the hell I'd carry this around and bring it out. Oh, that's right. The first person pointed out was re-quoting me that everything has some validity. So be that as it may even. If there is some basis for the fact that they were saying that jokes, the ones that are funny, in some way are based on, aimed at, taking into consideration people's incompleteness, then there also you follow the logic, verbal logic, of their response to my question. That means that anything joke that's not funny would not take into consideration somebody else's incompleteness, would not comment on it, not reflect on it, would not be based on the incompleteness of humanity. For a joke to be funny, in some way it's got to be reflective of humanity's incompleteness. Then it's funny. Then I'm asking you to carry along this kind of verbal logic, which if you wonder if there's any validity, why am I spending my time doing this? To carry it a little further, then my question to you was, then, does that mean that the intended state of man's completion would be that which is being referred to herein as happiness? If so, even though I tell you everything's all right, that almost smells like something is rotten in Cleveland. You mean all the jokes, all the humor, as much as you like to read, as often as I make little jokes that you catch, not even taking into consideration all those that you don't catch. And everybody here will assume enjoys a good joke. Then is all of this going on based upon, with you and everyone else on this planet, based upon man's incompleteness, which I'm asking you is another way of saying based upon the lack of happiness, which I'm asking you, which are we to assume is man's intended state? If so, things are in a hell of a mess, are they not? Because look at all the humor in life, right? Which shows that man's incomplete. At the same time, look at all the non-humor. As always, I can divide up the world right now into two camps. That which is funny and that which ain't funny. Starvation, mistreatment, prejudice, hatred, murders, rapes, attacks. So we got the world divided into two camps, or all the activities even. The activities that are funny, humorous, and those that by God aren't. Wars, famine, pestilence. So, as I asked you before, that would almost make you think that things are in a hell of a mess, because whichever camp you look at is proof positive of the picture I just conjured up, which has some verbal rationale. So at any given time, you're either engaged with that which is humorous, funny, or not humorous and funny. But in either case, you are reflecting, based upon the strain that I started here, the end of this refrain would have to be that no matter what you're doing, it is proof positive that you're incomplete. And yet from one view, if we take religion's view, if we take the view of your own partnership and the ideas that you thought you had in mind, in some way the term happiness would surely be an acceptable idea of the possible ultimate of this. All religions promise some kind of paradise, that you'll go where there's always happiness, no unhappiness. Anything that causes unhappiness will be forbidden. It will not be there. So everyone will be happy. Everyone will be complete. So what's going on here? Not just here, also here, but on this planet, with human life. If everything that's funny is a reflection of man's incompleteness, and if man's incompleteness is based upon him not being completely happy, and that everything in life can be divided up into that which causes happiness and that which doesn't cause happiness, then where in the world is a poor yokel to turn? Now that you've left the farm and you're here out of town, where are you going to find a room? Where are you going to find people that will be decent to you? Where are you going to find people that won't try to mistreat you and pull out 3 cards and say, how would you like to make some money? Or that somebody winks at you and say, hey, big boy, how would you like to have some fun? And you think, fun? Is that anything like happiness? And then you recall that I divide up into 2 camps. You can go and try to pursue ordinary happiness or not. And I point out, well, let's no need going back over that. Some of you might find it disconcerting, which just proves that you don't understand what real happiness is. See? I'll save that one. I got one with great drawings here. You'll never be able to see it, but we got a new artist here I didn't know about. All right, how about this? To go away from dividing things binarily, get into the better world of that which can be verbally trisected. In the areas that could not be called founts of happiness, I could divide up unhappiness, the lack of happiness, in 3 ways and ask you, are you sick, sorry, or confused? And I could ask, are you, that's you and humanity, are you sick, red circuit problems? Are you sorry, blue circuit problems? Are you confused? Or for those of you who like your drink straight with no ice, dumb. But I think confused has a certain amount of agreeable panache that dumb does not. So you could ask yourself and all of humanity, when we're considering those areas so prevalent, wherein things are not immediately happifying, by saying, am I someone else, humanity? Am I sick? Is that my cause apparently right now of unhappiness? Am I sorry? In some way I am emotionally distraught, self-pity, worrying about what I've done, guilt, non-material fear? Or am I confused? By me bringing it up, of course, I'm suggesting to you that all of the apparent sources of unhappiness, all the activities, all of even those things that appear to be nouns, that you in a lesser moment might say, this is causing my lack of happiness, that all of them would fall somewhere within those 3 questions. Am I red circuit sick? Am I blue circuit sorry? Am I yellow circuit confused? Now for the next question. Why does life give the man, force upon him, offer to him, these apparent distinctions? Even verbally. Of course, it's more than verbally, because people would tell you, any reasonable person, including yourself, with line-level consciousness, would say there is a difference, by God, between having a pulled hamstring muscle. There's a difference between that. It hurts. There's a difference between that and a favorite relative dying. An aunt that I grew up around died last week, and I actually hurt somewhere. I ache. I don't get too poetic. I don't get too religious. You know, I don't have a little heart-shaped thing like a Valentine breaking, but I actually hurt. It hurt when I went over there to the funeral, And even now, some of the relatives are still here from out of town, and I see them, and we still have this feeling about, poor Aunt so-and-so's gone, and it causes me pain. I am unhappy about it. But it's not the same kind of hurt as this hamstring. Not as prevalent, of course, would be people believing that they're studying philosophical matters or religious matters, trying to figure out why humanity and themselves do as they do, someone attempting to answer the great unanswerable questions, even without listening to Charles Ives. And they could say, it almost causes me pain. I sit down and I read books on philosophy. I go back, I read a little sociology. I'll try to find a little history. And I feel like I'm about to get some grasp of an overall picture of humanity moving as some great organism through history, through the progress of philosophical, psychological ideas. And even I try to keep in mind the growth of science. And at times I'll sit and I'll drink coffee and I'll smoke cigarettes. And I'll stay up for several days at a time, and I believe I'm almost about to grasp the full picture. I'm almost about to be the most intelligent person in the world. And I never quite get there, and I'll tell you the truth. I spend almost as much on aspirin as I do coffee. All right, that would be the yellow circuit disturbance. But from one viewpoint, as simplistic as life is, that is that we're serving ordinary people. Many of them like to say we're serving gods. Some contemporary people like to say we're serving no purpose at all as far as we know. I keep suggesting to you that it's, by now it should be obvious to you, at a minimal degree, that we are in some way, all of us, serving a living organism that is our apparent closed system host. So you can look at it as being pretty simplistic, or some smart aleck like to point out nowadays that life amounts to this. You're born, you suffer, and you die. But somewhere within that range, I'm asking you, why did life even give to man this ability, this apparent need, this obvious need to distinguish between suffering? Why isn't they just suffering? Why should there be a difference that people can think about, write about, a difference between pulling your hamstring muscle and hurting because a relative died? Or hurting because you cannot quite come up with a full philosophical, intellectual picture as to what life may be up to, what humanity is up to. Why should there be these distinctions? What possible purpose could be being served by life through man discussing, or even just on an individual tacit level, the awareness? You can get up and your mate has left you and they left a note on the bathroom mirror. So long, dickhead, I'm gone. And there it is, a pain. And then you pick up and you start to shave and then you cut real good. And there's another pain. You don't confuse the two. You can have them both simultaneously. Your attention goes from one to the other. God damn, I cut my ear off. And then you look up and there's the note and think, well, it's her fault. I wouldn't have cut my ear. I never cut shaving. Gavin left me in the morning. Didn't even have the decent, oh, God, I'm bleeding. And they're both going on. Why? What possible purpose could be being served that we are led to make such distinctions? Why isn't there just pain? I mean, who cares what? You're only here for a little while. Why have to have different kinds? I mean, why have to, just verbally, apparently, why have to have different kinds of pain? Why not just, there's pain and there's non-pain? All right, I could ask you, while reminding you that there are no perfect parallels now, but you get into the animal kingdom. You get down to even some of the more domesticated animals. And as far as you can see, which is a fair observation on that level, animals either have pain or not pain. And if they could talk, or from your own observation, they're either in pain or they're not in pain. It's not a perfect, as I repeat, parallel because we're dealing with creatures with fewer circuits. But why is it when it gets into man that there has to be an awareness, a distinction between the hamstring and the death of a loved one, and the continuing fear, if not realization, that I cannot get past a certain point intellectually, I cannot figure things out. I can't get all the I's dotted, the T's crossed. I can't get all the borders drawn around my little picture. The motif keeps slipping away. Why does there seem, or why is there the apparent need for such distinctions? There is. We wouldn't have them. But what possible use could life be making of this that we never see? All right, that you never see. I don't know why I should include myself in this. Well, I'll do my preacher bit for the night. This is not something I read on a sign in front of a church. In fact, I don't think this came out of this week's newspaper. Plus, I didn't hear anybody ever say this. So I must have read it in some kind of regular book. What do you call it? Hardback regular books. At some time in the past, I ran across this. And I believe it was from that very fertile, if not favorite area of you and I, the Middle Ages. Since most of you are getting there. That it was pointed out by somebody that it was not desirable based upon historical innuendo, if not proof at that time, that it was not profitable for a weak king to seek the assistance of a stronger one against a third-party enemy. Does everybody follow? That was not good business, said someone back then, for a weak king who is having conflict, and may get worse, with this other party, for this weak king to go and seek the aid of a stronger one to help him against this other one. That is not probably ultimately a profitable step to take. Now, that's all I remember of it. So I'm not going to tell you anything else, but now I will conjecture for you if you haven't. I shouldn't do it that way. Now I'll tell you the rest of what they said. At least a part of the rest of what they said that I can recall now. It was pointed out that throughout the years of history up until that time, that people had kept notes and stories had been passed around, which royalty, as people trying to stay in power, you can believe this, that those kind of stories that have to do with staying in power, they get passed around real good. Real good. Real good. That the stories that had been passed around, the information was that, hey, at first, if you end up and you find yourself in the position of being a weak king vis-a-vis some adjoining prince or king, and you realize trouble is a-brewing and about to get worse, and you need help. I mean, it's just obvious you need help. You would think the first thing to do, right, is to find somebody. You don't go find somebody as weak as you are. I guess that'd help a little. That's kind of a waste of time. Find another king that's a lot stronger than you. Or else, in a sense, it's an unprofitable move to even go get somebody unless they're stronger than you are to come help you, right? And some fledgling king would go, yeah. And the wise man of the court would say, no. That's the way it appears. But based upon our experience and all the tales that we passed along through your bloodline and those trying to stay in power, and he told the king, and believe you me, these stories get passed along. Believe you me. So what we found out, but contrary to what apparently immediately would seem to be the reasonable course of action, if you do that, and you and the stronger king, he comes in and helps you, and you defeat this other person, and you think you're going to turn around to the stronger king and say, I appreciate it. As they say in North Carolina, I appreciate your help, be sure and write. And the strong king says, no need to write, I ain't going nowhere. That you have suddenly, as it were, found yourself in a regal tandem that is now, instead of a bicycle built for two, it's a throne built for two, that you suddenly have a partner. And you have a partner that for several reasons is not going to immediately go away. One is that you at first immediately feel gratitude, and he says, don't worry about me riding, I ain't going anywhere right now. And you think, well, you come over here and pull my ass out of the fire and help me. I got to be reasonable. I'm not going to tell you to immediately get lost. So you can look at that as one reason. The second reason, which some of you may perceive to be perhaps even of more depth, was even if the first reason was not really upstanding at the time and the guy thought, I don't really want you to hang around, he's going to have to tell that to a guy that was stronger than him and just came in and helped him defeat somebody else. That is, the second reason is he may say, look, I'd prefer you leave now, the war's over. And the stronger king goes, your preferences are really interesting. They verge on being humorous, and which way is the castle? Where's the master bedroom? Now, let's see if we can figure out why in the hell I brought this up. Of why it was considered, what I say, how did it start out? That it's not considered the best policy for a weak king who's having trouble with some other principality, some other king, some other force, for him to go seek the aid of a stronger king. All right, that's where I started, right? I was repeating that. Now I went through all that crap. And then I just said, all right, now let's figure out, can we figure out why I brought this up? All right, that brings us up to date, right? Good. All right, next paragraph. You understand, that's the end of that. See what you can make, if anybody can, of this. Let's stick in that wonderful external realm of politics. Or to use it more, not just politics in the routine sense, especially in our part of the world, but the good old regal sense. I mean, it's still extant here. People wanting power, getting it, and not wanting to let go. But here the thing is, they can be cut off from power through non-physical means, through non-material means. That is, without having their cake rained on. But there's an area that goes on, and it just so happens that it's come up here in the last week or so. There's a renewed vengeance here in our country. And it's this, it's the political ploy of someone in power, the person. Here in our country, to use our example, would be our president as the head power handler. The political ploy has gone on as far back as history goes, and goes on right now, regardless of some smart aleck who might be you trying to say, wait a minute, something's wrong here. The ploy has always gone on, and it's going on. It went on this week here in this country. Front pages. It's the head person, the person with the power, turns around and fires somebody, cuts them off from power for this person's mistake. It is being known in some quarters right now here in this country. The particular example that brought this back to mind is Iran-gate. As this story came out, as some of you might have kept up, that apparently the president okayed some operations that were even against the law. And it just trickled out for a few days, as these things do sometimes, and just every indication, just every finger point that he had to know about it. And yet the mind wants to say, and I say the mind, the political commentators, that part of life interested in this, wants to say, nah, the head law preserver, the head man in power is not going against that, which in fact is his own laws. And yet there it is. But then within a few hours, a few days, you start hearing this is going to be a big meeting, there's going to be a great announcement, and heads are going to roll. And if you had any understanding of this, you understand what's going to happen. The ploy, the operation is that someone fucked up and got caught. And the higher up in power they are, the more this works. It has to work. Because once you get to the top, there's nowhere the king can't say, well, he made me do it. No, they get to stuff like this. I'm the one absolutely in charge, finally, president or king, the holder of power. But then it gets down to bad advice, something was done without my knowledge, I started something, I gave specific directions, whatever. And all of you who are still fairly new to this, remember, I'm not talking about politics whatsoever. Got no interest in it. Not as you know it. What it amounts to. The great admission, or being caught, that it is my fault. I'm not even going to say that in words. But I am the ultimate authority. And here it is, they've turned the spotlight on me, they got all these so-called facts, there are all these accusations, and I'm the head man. So what's the head man to do? I'm going to fire some fucker. But am I making this plain enough for you? The operation is you fire somebody, and let us say that in a sense, you got to listen real quick and follow what I'm saying, there's common knowledge that, hey, you're the one in charge. The only thing, you got several possibilities. You can plead stupidity, and that's going to make you look as bad as anything, to claim that I'm the guy in charge, I'm the king, I'm the power wielder, and these little underlings, these minions, could do something this dumb and me not know it. That makes me even dumber. So let's assume that there is some kind of consensus that you fucked up, king. King can never say it. The head authority never says it. But let's say there is a kind of open, tacit admission that the king fucked up. And when it gets real bad, real widespread, the king calls a press conference. And he says, you people have heard the terrible things going on. I want you to know I'm going to take remedial action swiftly. I'm firing Fred. Get that son of a bitch out of here. And the king, the president, walks off. And in a sense, everybody realizes this is a ploy. He got caught, and he fired somebody and walks away from it. Now, why in the hell did I bring that up? Or what possible use could anyone make of that? Personally, internally. Well, speaking for some of you, the immediate response is none. How in the hell could you use that? And my returning question to you is, why did I even bring it up? Rolling. Let me point out another one. This almost gets into a closed system. You got to listen real quick. But you should be getting accustomed to this because, although I never pointed out, it is good exercise if you use it. Not just to try and follow me running down some real arcane corner and turning into an abyss wherein logic has a flat tire, but to be able to continue to perceive the fact that this happens. If you're going to try and, with big U, understand anything, this is not going to do it under ordinary conditions. And I do not bring these up, of course, just to prove in some way I can come up with unanswerable questions. Because Athens was full of people like that 2,500 years ago. But now follow this. Let me make this comment. I'll start off with this. That under ordinary conditions, people can laugh at what they do, but they cannot laugh at what they are. They can laugh at their own stick, but they can't laugh at themselves, what they are. There's a reason I point out this distinction, and there is a reason life has that people do not ordinarily perceive this distinction. But now let me point out, let's go into real funny people. How about comedians? People who are funny people for a living. Comedians can laugh at what their own stick even. They can laugh at their own jokes. They can laugh at how bad their jokes are, but they cannot laugh at what they are. Now any of you with a real fast partnership may think, well, now wait, that's not exactly true, because there are people who almost made a living making jokes about the size of their nose. That was their stick. To them, that was not what they are. Because you could look right now, I could name names for examples, which I'm not going to do, because that's too easy. But let's stick with professional comedians. Many of them available on TV. You can flip them on and see them as easy as I can without going out and spending the big money in clubs. And you can see comedians on a regular basis. They have some show or show up on a regular basis. Or you may have known from movies. Anyway, think back what I'm telling you. And they don't have to be professional comedians. You may know somebody that's almost a comedian that you just know out in ordinary life. A comedian can laugh at his own shtick. He can laugh at what he does. And this includes ordinary people. I'm just using comedians as an extreme, hopeful example to make it easier for you to see or to start with. They can laugh at what they do. They can tell bad jokes and then laugh at it and point out to the people, boy, I steal these jokes. I got writers and I only pay them $50 a week. What do you people expect? Or as I said, their shtick can be how fat I am. And so most of their routine is about their fatness. But don't say, wait a minute, that's an exception, because now they're laughing at what they are. They are not. That's become their shtick. They can laugh at that. Being a professional fat person is now what they do, not what they are. But you can find a man that, let us say, that part of his shtick is what a bad delivery he has. That he tells jokes and he's kind of deadpan. Anyway, his routine, I don't know anybody like this, I'm just trying to make up something. His routine is what a bad comedian I am. And he tells jokes about how I tried to make a living doing other important things like being a chicken plucker. You know, I couldn't do anything and I'm here a comedian. But then you might notice that just from an ordinary viewpoint, not being an extreme critic, you might have occasion to notice that the guy walks out to tell jokes, and he walks in such a way as he apparently is suffering from a continual, almost terminal rash of some kind. But he walks like somebody that's about to fall apart. It looks like that his legs and his hips and everything is disjointed, enough that you notice it. You don't have to worry about being a critic of it. You just notice that the man is not very graceful, to say the very least. You will never hear a joke about that, but he apparently can make jokes at his own expense, but it's always on the basis of what he is doing. And his shtick could now include something about himself physically. But no one, comedian or otherwise, no ordinary person can laugh at what they are, taking into account, trying to remember that part of what they are could now become part of their shtick. And it doesn't have to be a professional comedian. You may know somebody, just an ordinary person you work with, that is fatter than ordinary. And they may be the first ones every day. Every morning they make jokes. Every time you go to the coffee machine, they reach for a donut, they make a joke about, well, here it goes on the thighs again. They may continually make jokes, but they're not really making jokes in the sense anymore of what they are. It is now part of their own routine. But within them, individually, within everybody individually at the ordinary level, there's a line past which things about you ain't funny. And somewhere along the line, as I said, you may have, through life's prodding, have drawn in some of your own physical aspects into your shtick. You may laugh at the size of your nose. You may be the first person to point out you're overweight. You may be the first person to point out that you're underweight, that you're too weak. But there is a line past which your shtick stops. And you know it very clearly, that you can laugh apparently at what you do, like being a fat person, being an underweight person, being a big-nosed person. But there is a line past which you cannot laugh because it is not funny. It has gone from what you do to what you are. At that line, all ordinary people stop. And you find out that everyone's sense of humor has a very ugly edge to it, because all you got to do is go past a point. And everyone, people much smaller than you, in some way will let you know you have passed the point of good taste. What you're dealing with now is no longer funny, my friend. This is not funny. And of course it varies from person to person, because some person you met, they might make a fat joke, and you find out you can make a fat joke, and apparently it does not affect them. And somebody make a joke about the size of one's ears, and you suddenly realize the guy that made the joke has ears that makes Dumbo look like that he grew up on a poor farm. And the person may go, aha, I see you look at my ears, and I make a joke about ears. And so you may think, well, that person is, in a sense, pretty sophisticated, that they have rather harmless inconsistencies. Their ears are bigger than any ones I've ever seen, and yet they seem to be able to laugh at it since they can't help it. What a great person. If you won't push it, you're going to find something very shortly that is not funny to that person, because it will get in, as far as they're concerned, to the point of what they are, and it can't be helped, and they cannot turn it into a routine. They cannot work it into their routine in any way. It is no longer funny, what you're talking about now. What in the world could be done with that? One more question I wanted to use. Going on with the delightful drawings. What it amounts to is this question. It's what could you do, or they're asking you, I've used the term, as some of you remember before, that if you were really a progressive mystical sort, you would try and fake it till you make it. That if we're going to say that understanding, supreme understanding, is the aim of this, and you don't have it by any means, you don't even feel like you have it, you don't even feel like that you're within the same state or perhaps country as it, play like you are. Fake it. The person is in a sense asking, is this possible? If so, how could you do it? What the hell does it mean? All right, it is possible to use this. It is in a sense simplistically difficult to an almost inhuman degree, except for this. Here's the simplicity of it. It's a very straightforward approach, if you can find how to do it yourself, that if you could pull together all of your circuits, all of your molecules, I'm using all in a very relative and non-literal sense, of course, pull all of this together, and you insist that, damn it, if what I'm thinking about, if I'm picturing this, if it is mortally possible, I'm willfully going to do it. Period. Or explanation mark, if you're that sort. That's it. I mean, anything else that the partnership wants to bring up are minor details. It's like saying there's no doubt I'm going to my brother's wedding in Omaha. I'm leaving in the morning. As soon as I get up, I'm going to get up. I got the time figured. I'm going to get up. I'm going to leave before dawn. I'm going to leave, and I'm driving. I got that laid out through the interstate system. I'm going to Omaha. That's it. Not any other questions like, well, I wonder how often, if your own partnership begin to say, I wonder how often there are service stations on interstate, whatever goes there. I don't know. I've never been on that interstate. I wonder if it's like a limited access like the parkways in Florida. I wonder how, fuck all that, right? But then he begins to wonder, well, all right, you laid out the mileage, and we're figuring a steady 60 miles average per hour to get us there in time for the wedding next Tuesday. But what if we get the areas of the interstate? It happens at times that they're working on it, and maybe they got it cut down to one lane of traffic, and maybe I have even an hour, 2 hours, that I can only average 30 miles an hour. Fuck that shit. I'm going to Omaha, and generally speaking, I know it can be done in X amount of hours, and it will require me leaving in the morning, at least before sunrise. Well, you say before sunrise, continues the partnership. Does that mean 1 minute before sunrise, 30 minutes before sunrise? Hey, would you shut the hell up? I'm going to leave before sunrise. It's sort of like that. All right, to get a toe in the door, let me remind you of my absolute unconditional encouragement for you to pursue, in a sense, useless hobbies. Getting to the point that you can do 100 push-ups, be you a man or a woman, first thing in the morning. Or lose weight, if you don't need to lose weight. Red circuit activities. Decide to learn how to run a computer. If you don't know anything about it, your job has Nothing to do with computers. If you know how to run a computer, the job you have now, it won't help you one birdseed's worth. It won't help you at all. You don't know anything to do with it. You just go do it. I usually start out with physical red circuit activities because they're the easiest to see. Most people seem to find it a way they can get their hands on something, and I'm not disregarding it. For those of you who are running 5 miles a day, I'm telling you, just decide. All right, by the end, I feel like now 5 is it. I've been doing 5. It took me a year to get up to 5. I get through with 5. In some way, the gods have worked this out. They smile on me. 5, I'm about to drop. And 5 brings me right back to my door, and it's just right. If during the night, if somebody cheated and took the blocks that I run around in my neighborhood and they stretched them out a little, I'd drop before I got home. And of course, it's not true. And so you decide, all right, 5, I just feel great. I never felt better. I keep my weight just right. I eat good. I sleep good. And I haven't told anybody they had to run any more than that. And you decide, I can't think of anything else to do. And I repeat, red circuit activities is the easiest because everybody can do something immediately. You just decide, from now on I won't drink any liquids except on the half hour every 2 hours. I won't eat any bread until further notice. Just anything. Don't hurt yourself. But you could decide, I am going to run, within 2 weeks, I'm going to be able to run 6 miles every day, or as soon as possible. You might not aim to do, say 2 weeks, because you might do it in 2 weeks, and then you got to do a new one. If you know how to do it, you know when the time's up. Pursuing, in a sense, that which seems to be an unnecessary hobby, to take up something new, is a good way. I say to start, it's not really a sequential event, or it's not even a sequential possibility, but it's like a good running companion. It is like a good parallel environment, a good parallel milieu to set up, and then try and consider, how could I make myself in some way fake it till I make it. But you've got to have the ability to some degree to willfully say, if any human has ever done this, if any human can do this, whether it be 100 push-ups first thing in the morning, whether it be running 6 miles, or whether it be whatever you have decided would be closer to your esoteric goal. If anybody can do it, I'm going to do it. And a bunch of it, I bet I can fake it. You could fake running 6 miles. You could tell your friends, the person with whom you live, from now on I'm going to run 6 miles. So I'll be probably another 20 minutes from now on getting home. And you can go out and run the 5 miles and then walk the last one. Or you can get real good and just go outside and go sit in the bushes or go up to Huddle House and drink coffee and wait the appropriate length of time, and then just get a half mile from the house and run as hard as you can. Get in, go, phew. People say, my God, you've gotten up from 5 to 6 miles. It's only been 3 days, hasn't it? I guess it's harder to, well, you can fake the push-ups. Just don't let anybody around you. Just tell people you do it. Or you can tell people as a test of your willpower, you lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks, and then just every time you get close to them, keep getting further and further back, and you'll look smaller. When you get a bullhorn, and when you see people you know, holler, hey, have you noticed how much thinner I look? That'll work, I guess. I guess that concludes this evening's thing. This is the first part of a task. I'm going to extend this sometime in the future, probably not too far away. But now listen. This is extremely potent. And I want everyone, have hesitation now telling everyone to write down and send me in a report, but this is how useful this can be. That if I were a little more full of turkey, I would insist that everybody keep records week by week and send it in telling me that you did this to make a note at the time. You knew people, this turkey was just after Thanksgiving. Plus, I did not mean it literally. 3 times each and every day from now on until I extend it. And this is really more than a task. This is good stuff. But I want every one of you to do this faithfully. I want you to take note of it mentally. And be sure and count. The first time you do it every day, say 1 to yourself. The second time you do it, say 2, and be sure that you get around to a 3 before you go to bed. And it's this. 3 times a day, I want you to willfully refrain from saying something that you, the partnership, wanted to say. You wanted to say it, you're about to say it. I don't care what. I don't mean that for some social reason that you were fixing to turn to somebody on the freeway and holler, "Get stuffed." I don't mean that. It don't have to be anything questionable from a social viewpoint, but something that you wanted to say, even if it was just yes or no. Something you immediately wanted to say. And 3 times a day, I want you to willfully refrain from saying that thing that you were about to say. 3 times every day. Do not consider from now on that that day has been well spent at all. If you cannot remember that sometime today, just before you go to sleep, that sometime today I recall saying 3, that at least 3 times a day I did not say something that I immediately wanted to say. And please remember, I am not saying to select something for some imaginary reason, because it was untoward, because it was unkind, because it was untrue. I don't really care what it is. It's got to be something, though, that you wanted to say. You're about to say it, is why I'm saying willfully you had to refrain from saying it. Whether it was 1 word, a whole explanation. But 3 times a day. And make sure that you make note that you did it at least 3 times. I'm telling you, this is more than a task. This is good stuff. It's 3 times a day. Do not say something that you wanted to say. Stay tuned, and I'll expand it later. And don't anybody eat turkey. There's a figure of speech